Another very unusual incident happened to two elders from the Dutch Reformed Church. They had come to the meetings and watched. One of them, as he heard Brother Branham diagnose the cases, telling the people what was wrong with them, and then as he witnessed miracles performed, became convinced that it was of God. The other elder sat there and also watched Brother Branham diagnose the cases, telling the people secret things of their heart, and that in the name of Jesus they had been healed and could get up and go home claiming and rejoicing in their healing. He became convinced that it was the result of demon power. The two men were both sincere, but they had come to different conclusions. The first elder went home. The second one went out under a tree to pray. While he was there praying, he asked God to show him if the things that he had seen were of God or of Satan. He was sincere and agreed to believe whatever was revealed to him by God. While he was praying, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned around to see who it was, but no one was there. Instead of seeing someone, he saw a vision. He saw two clouds, and there between them sat his elder friend exactly as they had been sitting shortly before when they were discussing Brother Branham's ministry. At the end of the vision, he went as quickly as he could to the elder's home to tell what had happened. As he was explaining the vision to him, other members of the family who were there noticed an imprint of a hand on his shirt. As they examined the shirt, they found it had been scorched, very plainly leaving the imprint of a left hand. The news came to Brother Branham about what had happened, and he said, "I know all about it. I saw it in a vision this afternoon. Bring me the shirt and my left hand will fit perfectly the scorched imprint left on the shirt." This was done, and it was as Brother Branham had said. That evening the shirt was brought to the meeting, and hundreds saw the scorched imprint of the hand on the shirt. One evening, as Brother Branham called for the prayer line to be formed, we found one of the numbers called was missing. Billy Paul had given out the prayer cards earlier in that same service, so we felt sure the person holding that number was present. Brother Branham requested everyone holding prayer cards to recheck their number, and if they held the missing number to please come forward. A lady then stood up and explained that she had that number. However, when she had first received the prayer card, she felt something go through her body. It was similar to an electric shock, only milder but of a longer duration. She had cancer on her lip, which was constantly painful. After this shock-like sensation, the pain was gone. She felt that she was healed, and therefore it was not necessary for her to go up in the prayer line. A Dutch Reformed elder came into the line for prayer. After praying for him, Brother Branham told him that he had received his healing and could go home praising God. He said also, "You have a wife who is at home suffering with cancer. You can rejoice because she is well too." Later, as the man approached his home, he saw that all the lights in the house were on and a couple of cars were outside. He became rather disturbed, wondering what was happening. As he entered the house, he saw his wife out of bed, feeling fine and thanking God for healing her body. She had called some friends when she felt she had been healed, and they had come over. Together they all rejoiced in the healing that both had received. During another meeting in Johannesburg, a young boy, about 7 or 8 years old, was called up in the prayer line. Brother Branham spoke to the boy for a few minutes, explaining that the weak heart which he had was caused by demon oppression. He told him that he would be delivered and someday would be preaching the same gospel that was now being brought to the people of South Africa. Suddenly, Brother Branham turned to the audience, and during the next few moments of silence, it was evident that he was seeing a vision of something over the audience. Then he pointed directly out over the pulpit and said that there was also a little girl and another boy out there suffering with the same affliction. Everyone felt tense as he pointed in the direction he knew they were, but could not find them. As moments passed, he insisted that they were there. He said that the spirit that was binding this boy was calling for help to other kindred demons in the audience. He continued to look but could not find them. Brother Baxter came up from behind and putting his hand on the back of Brother Branham caused him to move forward. As he did this, Brother Branham came closer to the pulpit and was able to see those who were just in front of it. There were the two he was looking for, a boy about 12 years old and a girl a couple of years younger. Both of them were lying on cots and had been hidden from his view because of the pulpit. He prayed for them and told them that they had been delivered from the demon which had been causing their weak heart. He had seen a vision of all three being well. Afterwards, I interviewed the mother of the boy who had been lying on the cot. She told me that her son was in such a condition that he could not sit up for more than 10 minutes a day. Brother Branham's ministry is very unusual, and as Brother Bosworth so often reminded us, there has never been anything like it since the time when Christ was here on earth. God has been good to his people, and from time to time has given us seers and prophets. But as far as we are able to find in the annals of history, there has been no one else with a ministry such as Brother Branham's. Often he would witness between 30 and 40 visions a day, and never has any one of them been wrong. Many times he would see visions of the services ahead of time, or incidents that would take place in the future. He would sometimes tell us about these before they actually happened, and then when we saw them, we would be reminded of what he had told us. Shortly after we arrived in Johannesburg, Brother Branham had a vision that the following day he, Brother Schoeman, and some others would be downtown. They would see a native standing on a corner with a blue shirt and white trousers. Brother Branham described the native, even describing the corner and the building by which the native was standing. The next day they went downtown and Brother Branham related this vision to those who were with him. As they were walking downtown, they rounded a corner and there directly in front of them stood this native, dressed exactly as Brother Branham had described him. The surroundings too were just as he had mentioned. One day Brother Branham saw in a vision a native girl who had a rather high forehead with a scar on it. She was sitting on the ground looking down as if she were doing something with her hands. Brother Branham related this vision to others, and a few days afterwards they were out driving around and there was this girl alongside the road selling beads. No one else in the car at first recognized the girl as being the one that Brother Branham had seen in the vision. After they had driven by about a half a mile, Brother Branham asked them if they would not stop and turn around because he wanted to see this girl who was sitting there by the road, making and selling these beads. They went back and stopped to look at some of the beads. Just as they were ready to go, Brother Branham said, "Doesn't anyone recognize this girl?" As they looked at her, they recognized her as the girl Brother Branham had told them about, sitting on the ground, looking down as if she were doing something with her hands. When she looked up, they also saw her high forehead and the scar. The first evening Brother Branham was in the home of Brother Schoeman, the chairman of the National Committee. He had a vision of what had happened to Brother Schoeman's daughter. She had had an operation on her eye. Brother Branham described the operation just as it had happened. Brother Schoeman confirmed everything that had been said. It was just as it had happened. After closing a week of meetings in Johannesburg, we motored to Klerksdorp. This is another mining city about 100 miles southwest of Johannesburg. The first service there was cancelled because of rain, and the second service was cancelled because of a windstorm and cold weather. Sunday morning, God spoke to Brother Branham through a vision, assuring him that we would have favorable weather during the rest of the meetings in South Africa. These two meetings were the only ones that were cancelled because of weather conditions throughout the entire tour of South Africa, even though some of the meetings were conducted in cities which were having their rainy season. Sunday, October 14th, was a beautiful day. People drove in from hundreds of miles for the meetings. I was told by several of the townspeople that it was the largest group that ever gathered in the city of Klerksdorp. Brother Baxter brought the gospel message that evening, and when he asked for those who would stand and thereby signify their acceptance of Jesus Christ as their Savior and Lord, approximately 3,000 people stood in response to the call. As the people in this town also witnessed the wonder-working power of the Lord through Brother Branham, they too admitted that a prophet from another land was visiting them. They realized that perhaps they would never again see anything like this in their lifetime. Sunday was one of the greatest days that Klerksdorp had ever seen. There were many who received healing for both their body and soul. I'm thinking of the little boy that was 11 or 12 years old who had received a prayer card and whose number had been called. As he came up to the platform, I noticed that his eyes were very badly crossed. As soon as Brother Branham saw him, he related the story of his little girl whose eyes had crossed because of the intense pain she suffered shortly before her death. Brother Branham never ceases to be moved with compassion when he sees a young child with crossed eyes. He prayed for the boy and then asked him to look up. As he did, his eyes became straight. The boy turned to the audience and the people rejoiced in the fact that the eyes which had been crossed were now perfectly straight. A local doctor examined the boy and declared his eyes to be normal. After the service, I obtained a photo of this boy, which we have here. One evening after the service, some of us were sitting around the dining room table at the home of Pastor P.F. Foree, one of the local pastors. We were enjoying some refreshments and Brother Branham was talking to us about spiritual truths. After Mrs. Foree came and joined us at the table, I noticed that Brother Branham was watching each of us very closely, as if he were looking for something. Within a few minutes, he sat back in his chair and told us that he had had a vision that afternoon. Now we were sitting around the table just as he had seen us. Brother Bosworth sat at one end of the table, Pastor and Mrs. Foree at the opposite end, and Sidney Smith and I were on one side across from Brother Branham. Each of us was in the exact location and position in which he had seen us in the vision that afternoon. Now he could tell what God had revealed to him. He turned to Mrs. Foree and related to her some incidents from her youth. As he went into detail, she sat there thrilled to think that God had spoken to his prophet concerning her. He also told her that she had a bad heart and stomach trouble which was caused by nervousness. After talking further concerning the vision and speaking words of encouragement to her, he excused himself from the table and retired for the evening. Our next stop was from October 17th through the 21st at Kimberley, the diamond capital of the world. The meetings there were scheduled for the town hall, but during the first evening service the building was packed and there were even more people on the outside than there were on the inside. The local committee realized something must be done in order to make provision for the thousands who wanted to attend the meetings. Through the fine cooperation of the mining industry, we obtained the use of the De Beers Stadium, which had seating accommodations for about 6,000 and is rated as one of the finest sports arenas in South Africa. Only eternity will reveal what was accomplished because of the added facilities. While Brother Bosworth was eating in a local cafe, a young man came and asked him if he was not a member of the Branham Party. He told him that he had come from Southwest Africa and that his 5-year-old daughter was dying of cancer. He asked Brother Bosworth what could be done so that his child might receive the healing which he realized Christ had purchased. Brother Bosworth explained to him that although he might not be able to obtain a prayer card, he still could obtain healing. He advised him to be in constant prayer that God would give Brother Branham a vision of his child who was suffering from cancer. The man came to the service believing God. As he stood on the side, praying, Brother Branham turned to him and said, "Go home. If you can believe, your child who is at home suffering with cancer will be well." Afterwards, I asked Brother Branham what he had seen in connection with this man, and he told me he had seen a vision of a little girl lying on a bed, suffering with cancer. A halo hanging directly over the man indicated that it was that man's child. Sidney Smith of Durban, who was traveling with us at this time, related to me a very impressive incident. Mr. Smith had just stopped at the house where Brother Branham was staying to get him for a service. As he stepped out of the gate into the street, he was met by a very thin man who recognized Brother Branham and asked him to pray for him. The man rolled up his sleeves to show how thin his arms were. They were no larger than the size of a man's wrist. Brother Branham looked at him and said, "You are suffering from TB. Do you believe God?" The man said, "I believe God." Brother Branham prayed for him and spoke to him for a few minutes, after which he said, "Let's see your arm again." This time when the man rolled up his sleeve, he was amazed to see that his arm had enlarged and now appeared to be stronger than it had been a few minutes before. This was a case where God not only healed the man instantly, but miraculously gave him physical strength which ordinarily would return gradually.